Hey guys, so in this video, I wanted to do a meet recap for my lifter Trever, who just competed this weekend and had a couple of really big milestones. So first off, he squatted 666 pounds, which you guys are seeing right here, which is basically a perfect call on the day. Trever takes really big jumps in training. We're going to get into this a little bit later. But basically took a second attempt with 567, and I kind of know how he moves. Trever is very fast until he's not. And so I think that this is the exact perfect call. If we loaded in any more, then, wouldn't have gone. But this is a huge milestone at 194. This is over a 3 times bodyweight squat as a teenager, which is unreal. Trevor's only 21 years old. He works extremely hard. And I just could be more happy about this. Bench press, he has benched more than this in training. However, different equipment, meet days, different, commands, etc. I think you probably had 364 on the day, but again, just building that total. So took what we had there, and then he only ended up with his opener because right after this, we actually jumped to 300 kilos. This moved very well. The reason why we jumped up to 300 kilos is because if you look at this block, and we'll go over his training going into the meet, but a couple blocks out from his competition block, we did 300 kilos on deadlift. He did it, and he did it conventional too. So that's why we it should be there. Now he didn't post that, but his first attempt he actually did sumo, and basically with Trevor's programming, we push his sumo about as hard as his. So if you look over his training. This is actually, so I'll show you this after. This is his sumo, or his conventional. How do I pull up this one? Sorry, guys. I guess I'll go over his conventional first. I think I had to close this out. But basically, you look here, here's his sumo. Okay. So if you look at this, really fast off the floor, but at the knees, it starts to roll and fall out of his hands. You guys can see that. This is something that Trevor's always struggled with, is rolling at lockouts, and really this is a problem too, especially with can be a problem with mixed grip, especially unless you get some sort of rubbing on your thighs. And so I knew, well, if we do conventional, we probably will not have that happen. So I made the executive choice to tell him to do conventional on his third because, this is a little bit of a risk, but, he's already done it conventional. And, he was grinding at his knees. I knew, well, conventional, you can typically grind through that sticking point, whereas sumo, you can't. I was like, oh my God, he's going to get it. But, again, grip happened and it fell out of his hands. Now, one thing that if you look at what he did on both of these lifts is that it's hard to see from this angle, but if you go to a direct side angle, he starts to lean back too early instead of thinking of driving his torso vertical, and really so he loses leverage over the bar. Once you get to that point, it's basically all back and hip extensor strength, which he has very strong back and hip extensors, but, that is also going to cause a little more rolling on the thighs. So, going forward, we're definitely going to add in some more heavy bar holds, and just really emphasize probably some more variations with some pause work just to make sure that he can have a little bit more time with holding a heavy weight. Also just, helping with his overall positioning off the floor and really just reinforcing you need to drive upwards after that. It's really, that's like a upside down leg press. But Trevor's training approach is freaking weird. So I say this because I've never seen somebody who responds so well to such low average intensity. So you can see with the squat, first off, we squat twice per week. Pretty normal, like a secondary day layout where, it's basically I regress basically by by a couple RPEs. We use some light back down work. It's very light. And 2 count pause, high bar squat, I gave that to Trever because Trever really benefits from really understanding how forward knee child works because he's a rather hingy squatter naturally on his low bar squat. So giving him something that is going to help reinforce driving those knees forward is really helpful with him just being able to use his strong quads. His back is very strong. So as long as we have, something in there to help reinforce that, it just has to be better. I did give him safety bar squats in the past, but I tended to fatigue his back a little bit too much going into his deadlifts. And so this turned out to be a pretty good variation. But this is the really interesting part. So you'll see that we do take off a ton of weight for his back down set. So on this block, I gave him something a little bit different. Basically a linear like periodization where we went down to like a single at the very end, which has actually proved to be very, very well. Like a very, very good way to peak him. And I think going forward, we'll probably do something light like this. Going forward, this is probably like the best block that we ever had. But very, very light. Like Trever will literally do, 600 pounds for a single, and then sets of 3 with 4, 50, 51, which is like, it's like 75% of that. Yeah, it's super, super light. It's just like sub 5 RPE work, but it's plenty of volume. And sometimes, this is how most lifters will respond. The thing is that before this, I gave Trever a pretty traditional, I would say, average intensity training approach, and he was making some progress initially, but then he just was feeling pretty beat up. And Trever comes from a background of having trained conjugate and kind of like equipped West Side sort of thing. And basically they are very high intensity, max effort days, and then very, very light, dynamic effort days. And with raw powerlifting, that general layout is good, but you need to have more higher intensity on a secondary day before of overload to basically bridge that gap between your primary day and your secondary day. Is basically how your primary day feels depends on your secondary day. And so for Trever, I really want to give him a training approach that allowed him to still push that top end intensity without overly fatiguing him for his volume, but still being able to get plenty of volume. And as Trever likes lifting, going into this block, we gave him a single, but it was like a 4x4, then like a 5x4 back down work. So it still has tons of volume, but again, it's super low RPE. It's like sub 5 RPE across all weeks, but Trever likes doing a lot of work. He's very explosive, and this really helps him really gauge his, have more energy across the training week to go heavier more consistently. And for strength gains, and as long as you can tolerate that, Trevor's very unique with that. He can, and that tends to be better. So overall, that's sort of like what we did going into this. This block was a little bit longer because of schedule, but he was really having really consistent performance. Like nothing was getting slower throughout the block. Like you guys kind of like look at his deadlift from all right, this is 300 kilos in the gym that he did. Again, we know it's there. The thing about meet is that it's hard to pace yourself all throughout a meet. He literally was, it was a 60 lifter meet. At the USAPL, you have to weigh in at 7 a.m., your 2-hour weigh-in, and, he squatted at around 11, around 11 o'clock. His bench around 2 and wasn't deadlifting until 5. And that's just a really long day. It's hard to pace your effort, and he was just getting pretty tired by that point. And so, again, this is why, on meets day, you can hit something in the gym, but you need to basically have a very fresh mindset of I did hit this number in the gym, but I need to go off of what I have right now and what the day is presenting me. But if you look at his training, his deadlift was going basically the same speed. This is a 617 up to his 650 one week out. So everything was indicating that 300 kilos was going to be there. Again, just meet day is meet day. So we don't really have too many plans for changing deadlift or squat. It's working very, very well. He doesn't do a ton of accessories either. He's got so much volume on the comp lifts. But again, his squats, it's elite. It's working very, 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 very well. That's what his training looked like going into it. A little bit higher intensity on the secondary day. But basically adding in a little bit more heavy bar holds and probably some more pause work, especially on sumo deadlift. This just really reinforce that positioning of staying over the bar, and really some of the heavier bar holds to help work on his grip strength. But yeah, and then bench press, again, very similar, except a little bit more volume on the secondary day. One top set of comp bench, one set of close grip bench press. As bench press was really going well. The thing is that different rack, different setup, and whatnot. You have to adapt to the day. Now, one thing I do think going into the meet, I think that one thing that I could have done as his coach with his taper, if you look here, I think I probably over tapered him just a little bit in general. Because Trever was feeling pretty good going into this, but I took off quite a bit of volume going into this, and I think that what I've learned from this is I think a lot of accessories drive Trevor's strength. So instead of taking them all out going forward, I'm probably just going to keep in like one set, but keep that same layout and probably put the RPE down, like a little bit, like like a 5 to 7. Like this is actually what I do because I have found that I feel better and more predictably strong on that. So I think that is probably what happened. I also think that he probably maybe had some slight detraining on his deadlift going into the meet. So I think that potentially on this day, I'm giving him a heavier deadlift. Because again, he goes heavy twice per week, and keeping that microcycle schedule is really important in terms of frequency of overload going into the meet. And probably just, again, like not moving his bench like any other day, just keeping bench like right there. I probably would still put deadlift a little bit closer to, like this day, but I think that will I want to experiment with like some sort of mock peak week or something like that, where we do keep like the deadlift in on that third day. Like if you guys are familiar with Chance Mitchell, he fell off the face of the earth, but he would basically keep the exact same training schedule and still deadlift, heavy-ish a couple of days before the meet. Like your training schedule absolutely matters in the frequency of when you do overload. Basically, if you look at Trevor's, how his training is kind of set up is like with his frequency of heavy exposure, that's kind of how I define like your microcycle length. He has a shorter microcycle length than other lifters. Like it's just, he goes heavy very often. And that's sort of how he best performs. But yeah, I want to experiment with that just a little bit. But in all likelihood, we'll probably still keep in the deadlift on a Monday, just keeping a little bit heavier intensity, probably closer to an actual true RPE 5, not like 75%, which is a sub 5 RPE, just keep him a little bit more in tune with that. Now going over his deadlift, I think that as a coach, what I could have done better is I could have said, you know what, you're already feeling, Trevor was telling me he was feeling a little bit tired at this point. And I think that as a coach, obviously, so when you're handling somebody, you're working with an athlete, you do need to basically, you're working for them. You're basically like, Trevor told me going into this conversation I have with every one of my athletes, like what does success means to you? Trevor mostly wanted to get a 600 squat and hit the 300 kilo deadlift. And, I wanted to have a little more of a conservative approach and like build the total with having, okay, let's have a lighter second attempt. Say something like, 640. And then, if that's there, then we can go. Because Trevor needed to have 650 to qualify for nationals at this meet. But, I think that as a coach, I should have taken a little bit more of a diplomatic approach and said, dude, let's just make sure that you have it and let's lock in a 5-pound PR and build. But at the same time, we had data in training that he was peaked and that this was, going to be there on the day. But, again, like hell of a fight, just grip was starting to go. So again, this is just the nature of powerlifting. What I told Trevor is that, winners have short memories regardless of the outcome. Trevor is insanely strong. He got third still at this meet with like a 460 dots, like after, missing his, leaving a lot in the tank on deadlift. And so, the reality about powerlifting is that you need to have a short-term memory. I've missed my third deadlifts, before I left a lot on the table. But one thing I am going to probably just try to have Trevor doing is instead of taking these really massive jumps, is probably like at the very most take like a 10% jump, which is still massive, but I probably just train a little bit differently with how you're warming up, just so you can get a little bit more used to it. The reality is that if you're having a proper temp selection and strategy and whatnot, you should be able to get stronger as you are doing your attempts and not get gassed. So overall, just a really great day, huge milestone, like hitting 358 is like, basically this is still in terms of PRs on his lift, he hit 573 last time, so this is a 33-pound squat PR. He hit 341 last time, and this is a 17-pound bench press PR. And then on deadlift, I think on the day he definitely had about 650. So, all in all, in terms of, if we did, how the perfect execution on the day, we had 33 pounds plus 17 plus, last meet he hit 633 on deadlift, so it would have been another 17-pound PR. So a 67-pound meet PR in just about 5 months, which is pretty amazing. So if you guys don't follow Trevor, definitely watch him and go follow and give him a follow. This is his profile. I'll link it down in the bio below. But yeah, that's what I wanted to go over today. Again, just giving you an idea of what different athletes' training approach is. And this is the thing about powerlifting and why there's no real course, is that you have to go off of data and communication with the athlete and what the personality type is, etc., with determining what works. I would never have thought in 1,000 years that this would be what Trevor needed to get stronger. but it is. So, that's kind of what coaching is. So we're going to keep adapting and getting better. And, this is just one step in his journey. And so really excited to see what he has to do in the future.